It makes sense that ghosts and ships go together so often. Imagine life at sea, especially before wireless communication technology was developed. You are totally cut off from the rest of society, living in close quarters with a bunch of surly sailors, often made to go without any kind of good food, left to your own devices when not working yourself to the bone. Plenty of folks got lost out there or died of unfortunate circumstances or saw things that may or may not have been influenced by their own super bored brains. And that's not even taking the mythology of ghost ships and cursed captains into account. So let's talk about the top 5 mysterious ghost ship stories. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether these are real ghosts or if there's a different explanation. Coming in at number 5, we've got the Mary Celeste. Don't be tricked by the lovely name, this ship is no fair maiden. Maybe it was named for one, but that's got nothing to do with their ghostly tale. This tale is a tragic one indeed, and one that seems ridiculously risky by today's standards. A captain decided he wanted to make the trip from New York to Italy aboard his ship, the Mary Celeste. Had he decided to bring a super experienced crew and a bunch of cargo, that would be one thing, but this nautical journey was no such business trip. Instead, he decided to bring his wife, 2-year-old daughter, and a crew of 7. That's a small group of people for such an extensive journey, especially when bringing one's family along. But everyone boarded the ship regardless and headed out to sea. Their journey should have been about a month, but they never arrived in Italy. Instead, another ship known as the Dei Gratia came across the Mary Celeste, floating aimlessly in the sea. Assuming the worst, the crew of this new ship went to see if anyone was still aboard. But they were never able to help anyone as the ship turned out to be empty. But it wasn't totally gutted though. There were still plenty of supplies in the larder and the ship itself was still in pretty good shape. Sure, there was a bunch of water on the deck, but it wasn't like it was gonna sink anytime soon. Stranger still, the lifeboat was gone with no indication as to why or where it was heading. So there the Mary Celeste was, without a captain, crew, or family, drifting in the Atlantic. It became one of the most famous ghost ships of its era too, as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle drew inspiration from it, and used this inspiration to write his short story, J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. This tale was a launching board for many theories, from pirates to mutiny to cold-blooded murder. The thing is, nobody knows for sure what actually happened. The captain, his crew, and his family were never heard from again. Now, there are some more realistic theories that have come forth about the inexperienced captain not knowing the full extent of damage to his ship and ordering everyone maybe prematurely onto a lifeboat at the first sight of land. Even so, that likely ended in tragedy as well, as the lifeboat never made it to shore, or so we think. And with all those supplies still on board and the ship not going down anytime soon, it feels a bit like an ironic tragedy now, doesn't it? Coming in at number 4, we've got the Kobenhagen. 5 masts, and none of them prevented the ship from going ghost. You'd think it would be easier to spot that way, but hey, unlike our last ghostly tale, this ship was jam-packed with capable sailors. Well, partly anyway. The Kobenhagen was known as a training ship, which would often take a fair number of cadets. They would learn how to best run the ship so that their subsequent journeys might go a little smoother. One would assume that a training ship wouldn't be subject to overly harsh conditions, just like how any training is supposed to lower the risk of failure during a real-life scenario. Unfortunately, this was not the case. 60 sailors marched aboard this well-fitted ship, and once they departed, they were never seen again. The ship had all anyone would need to succeed, including plenty of lifeboats, an auxiliary engine, and a wireless communication system. So, what went wrong? Nobody really knows. It left the Rio de la Plata on December 14th, heading to Australia. On the 21st, the crew was in touch with another ship and all seemed to be well. After that though, they went totally silent. Some think they ran into an iceberg, others claim that it could have been something more sinister. Either way, darkness and fog definitely played into the equation. For years, the Kobenhagen was missing in action with nothing to show for it. However, some sailors did claim to see a phantom ship with 5 masts sailing the seas. Now, the ghost crew hasn't attempted to communicate with anybody yet, nor has anybody been able to get close enough to confirm what they've seen. But you'd better believe those cadets are seasoned sailors by now. Back in 2012, a wreck was discovered that many believe to be the Kobenhagen. However, this still goes unconfirmed. Coming in at number 3, we've got the tale of the Jenny. Now, the tales I've told up until this point have been mysterious indeed. The fates of the folks on board are up in the air and may never be fully explained. The story of the Jenny is just as mysterious, especially because it's been contested by a few folks, but the fate of the crew, if you believe the story, is more cut and dry, or should I say, frozen and wet. In this unsubstantiated story of oceanic horror, the crew of a ship named Hope came across what appeared to be a ship in pretty good shape. From a distance, there appeared to be crew members working on the deck. This struck the crew of the Hope as a little strange, as the Jenny had been missing for many years. When they got closer, it all started making sense though. The men they had seen atop the ship were indeed still there, but not alive. Each one was frozen solid, met with a frigid end. Yikes. Things got worse when the captain of the Hope decided to check out the inside of the ship, where he found more frozen corpses. The Jenny's captain was discovered frozen to a chair with a journal nearby. The final entry in his log read, "No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive." That one sentence carries all sorts of latent horror, with images of more than 2 months without food in a horrible frozen environment. One has to wonder if any crewmates became food for the survivors, and what life must have been like as Hope faded by the day. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Baron Falkenberg. Here's a general rule for life: don't kill your brother and his bride. If you can't abide by that, maybe you deserve to be carted out to a ghost ship and doomed to roam the waters until time immemorial. The good Baron was unable to follow this seemingly simple rule and ended up in a less than savory position. The story goes like this. One day, after being missing for quite a while, Baron Falkenberg's brother returned home. Folks were quite pleased with his return, and the brother proposed marriage to a lovely young maiden the Baron himself was interested in. At their wedding feast, the Baron lost his temper and cracked his sibling over the head with a bottle, killing him. The bride-to-be was terrified and ran off, but the Baron pursued her to confess his love. This didn't go over very well, and the woman told the Baron that she'd rather be dead than be with him. A very literal man, the Baron interpreted this dramatic retort as a request, and he stabbed her. Realizing the grave mistake he'd made, the Baron fled to the beach, where he found a man with a dinghy waiting. This man told the Baron that the captain was waiting for him and rowed out to a much larger ship off the shore. From there, the Baron boarded the ship, and for the past half a millennium, he's remained on board. This ship always seems to be heading north, flickering with blue flame and filled with skeletal sailors. And finally, at number 1, we've got the Palatine. Forget the Block Island sound, we're talking about the Block Island light. If you ever find yourself around Rhode Island between Christmas and New Year's, take a look across the water at night. It's said you might see an old ship blazing against the darkness. There are many stories about where this ship came from, and none have been officially confirmed. Some say that the crew had come down with a terrible illness and the captain would not let them go to shore. Others say that folks from Rhode Island lured the ship to the shoals in order to take what they could from it, killing the remaining passengers. And then there's the alternate version where the locals actually rescued the folks on board and nursed them back to health. So why is the ship on fire in the ghostly apparitions then? Well, apparently a woman was left on the island by the ship and eventually came to be known as a witch. She got her revenge on the vessel by imagining it on fire and cursing it for leaving her alone. This idea became more popular, and now the story involves a flaming ship. Do boats give you the chills? Are floating vessels as spooky as history makes them out to be? Are pirates scarier as humans or ghosts? All very good questions to consider at this point in time. So, what'd you think of the list? Do you agree with my picks? What's the best ghost ship story of all time? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more icy ones from the top 5 horror TV shows that deserve your attention, part 2. Roberto Buatti says, love Freddy's Nightmares, used to watch it in the early to mid 90s, been looking everywhere to buy the complete series on DVD or Blu-ray, but no such luck. I'm honestly surprised it doesn't stream anywhere. Braden McKay says, yeah, I've watched all these and lost interest in all of them fast. Nothing really scares me anymore. Sounds like you could use some fresh perspective. Maybe take a break, try something new. Jenny G says, I can't commit to TV series, lose interest too quickly, give me a film any day. See, I agree with this. I like having a complete story with a guaranteed ending, you know? TV, it's great, but movies, mwah. Daniel Thorne says cigarette burns is the best episode I have seen in any anthology. I'm glad you've got a favorite, especially when I mentioned it. And Sassy Karen says American Horror Story will always be my favorite. Oh, it's definitely a legendary show. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to try my hand at high stakes espionage. Next stop, Russia. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ready to rock and roll? Don't have too many flyaways. Stranger still, the lifeboat was gone with no indication as. Yep, that's the thing. I don't know, man. These ships. When they got closer. I thought my coffee would have hit by now. Who knows? One has to wonder if any crewmates became food for this. The story goes like this. That's how the story goes. The end.